Let's move into the final topic. We are talking about Karl-Anthony Towns' relationship apparently souring with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Report from the Low Post, the ESPN podcast with Zach Lowe, said, we're going to redo that.
Zach
Lowe,
how
awesome of a name is that? The Low Post with Zach Lowe?
That's pretty good.
Fucking sick.
Dropping bombs.
I got
this week
nothing for my
week.
name.
Let's move into the final topic, though, and we're talking about the souring relationship between Karl-Anthony Towns and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Appearing on Friday's episode of the Low Post, ESPN.com's Zach Lowe said Towns and the Timberwolves are not in a good place internally. ESPN.com's Brian Windhorst, who joined Lowe for a lengthy conversation, later posted it would not be unheard of if Towns' name eventually surfaced in trade discussions. I don't think Anthony Davis is going anywhere anytime soon, Windhorst said, but Karl-Anthony Towns, now that might be a different story. So Cat in trade rumors, possibly. Let's first talk about the relationship. Let's talk about why Cat might be at least upset, and if this is, possibly fixable. Because again, we're not going to. This isn't something that's happening right now. We're not reporting that Cat is in trade rumors, but it's possible that at least the relationship has been souring. So this is a team, Minnesota, that from Cat's time, they have gone from having the worst pick, Karl-Anthony Towns, number 1 overall, to now being in the playoffs this year. What do you think has at least turned the tide for Karl-Anthony Towns? Do you think this is just over the course of 3 years? He doesn't like the change of from Flip Saunders, unfortunately passing, to Tom Thibodeau. Do you think it's something with Andrew Wiggins and Jimmy Butler? What do you think is the key, at least driving force between the wedge of Karl-Anthony Towns and the Minnesota Timberwolves?
I think it's Tom Thibodeau, and
I think he likes his knees.
And the reason why, I say that is, first off, we saw this during the Rockets series, where obviously it was like something's not right. Maybe he's not being used enough, yada, yada, yada. But what I go back to is it just makes me think of when I read Coach Cal's book. And early on he talked about Karl-Anthony Towns and even mentioned the whole like Carlito thing, the little like cat that's on his shoulder that he talks to.
Totally normal.
And the thing is, I feel like for me, and I don't know Karl-Anthony Towns, I don't know the situation, but I feel like Karl-Anthony Towns through Cal talking about it, he might be a unique guy to deal with where it's like, you know what, you got to know how to deal with Cat. And I don't think Thibodeau is a player to, come here, what's going on? Thibodeau's a guy, do it my way, this way,
You don't see Thibodeau as a loving father, mentor?
No, exactly. I don't. And I feel like that's the main rift that maybe Karl-Anthony Towns isn't gelling with Tibbs as the head coach.
Well, we did see Cat's usage go down from at least the 2016-2017 season to the 2017-2018 season when they did bring in Jimmy Butler. And Ricky did mention the playoff performance of Cat in the 2017-2018 playoffs. Of course, the minutes were a little bit shaky for Cat. In the second game, he only played 23 minutes. Then in Game 4, he only played 31 minutes. He did have games of 40 minutes played, 38 minutes played, 35 minutes played. But overall, in the playoffs, scored 15.2 points per game, 13.4 rebounds, 2.2 assists, shot 46% from the field and 27.3% from three. But he had a rough first 2 games, scoring 8 and 5 points. Dave, this is something that we mentioned that Karl-Anthony Towns looked like trash in those first 2 games. Do you think this is just a young player not knowing how the NBA works, or do you think it is something like we mentioned where, again, maybe Tom Thibodeau doesn't know how to work with Karl-Anthony Towns?
I'm honestly leaning more towards the second one. I think that Cat has a ton of potential and is an offensive stud. I think the fact that their game plan is no longer built around Cat being their one and their go-to guy is kind of what's hurting him the most, because he had the keys to the ride. It was him and Wiggins. They're 1-2. They're going to roll with it. And then all of a sudden, even Levine was 3. And like that, those 3 guys worked out. You saw where that could go. And then they pull out the rug and like, Jimmy Butler's the dude here. He's better than you. And we're going to run with him. And if you get your points in, that's cool. But just don't expect our offense to run through you. So, taking a smaller role in your offense is one thing. But when all you bring to a team is offense, that's a majority of his game now that you're just chipping away from him. And you're telling him, you're not as valuable to us right now. What you provide for us is...
And kind of to play off of that, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, you did.
Well, I mean... What I just jumped into
Rick,
was what you were saying. And it's like Thibodeau, we know from him being with the Bulls, doesn't necessarily like to develop young talent, doesn't really play the rookies at all. Jimmy's
that's literally the only one, though.
But I mean, like, besides that, I found the exact excerpt that I was looking for from Cal's book, where he said the key for all of them, and really Cat is in this, is to build from strengths while also developing new parts of their game. I don't want them to try things in games they are not capable of, but once they've developed some proficiency, they can't be scared to do it in a game. I don't think Thibodeau's like that. I don't think Thibodeau's like, you know what? This isn't really a facet. You know what? We're gonna develop it, but not use it. Tibbs is probably a guy, I want this done, and boom, that's it.
I don't know. We've seen Cat still develop as an offensive player. I mean, he's still getting better as a three-point shooter. Shot over 40% from three this year.
Defensively.
Okay, but what I was going to say is, maybe we saw the usage go down, and maybe we've seen what Anthony Davis has done in New Orleans. Be the guy on a team. Maybe Cat's seeing that, thinking that he is a very similar player to Anthony Davis and wants to be able to produce that. Defensively, I think Cat is a guy that doesn't have a lot of strengths defensively, and he did have a better defensive year. I don't think that's anything where he can be upset about. Karl-Anthony Towns was a terrible defensive player in his sophomore year and his rookie year, and now he got a little bit better. He's still not great, but he still got better. There was still an improvement in his game. I think the biggest thing is the usage. He just had a great year, 25 points per game, and then it goes down to 21 points per game, and he only played about 100 less minutes this year. So again, this is something where his percentages were better. He was a better shooter this year. He was at least more dynamic on the offensive end, yet his numbers were not where they were in his sophomore year. I think that's the biggest thing. And maybe, again, we've talked about Thibodeau. He's a defensive guy, doesn't have a lot of imaginative offensive sets. This could be something that Karl-Anthony Towns, as an offensive guy with his best potential being offensively, is not being fully used. I think that's something where the strengths might not be playing up. Dave, how do they change that, or is that changeable? I mean, would you go away from what worked last year, getting you to be a playoff team, and focusing solely on Cat, or would you just go with what works, which was mainly for the majority of the season, Jimmy Butler?
Butler carried their ass to the playoffs.
Butler was hurt.
Yeah,
in about February.
And that's how they almost dropped out of the playoffs.
And then
they were the
back.
number 3 seed with a healthy Jimmy Butler. Number 3 seed in the West. Think about that. That's ridiculous how far they fell off because their one player in Jimmy Butler was hurt. Tibbs made the right move in saying Jimmy's how we win games. He wasn't wrong. I think where he fell off was just completely killing all motivation for Karl-Anthony Towns. You saw stretches of games where he just didn't care. He was out on the floor, and there was zero effort being put in. He got benched multiple times for it during games. That's why if you look at his minutes, they dropped off. His usage dropped off while Jimmy wasn't, Jimmy was healthy. When Jimmy was hurt and we watched it go back, Cat can still ball out, guys. Remember that? Cat's pretty good this game. It's a motivation problem. It's depressing if you're Cat when you're being told you're good, but you're not good enough to get us there. So you're now riding on Jimmy Butler's shoulders.
It is It is funny though, looking at the 17 games where Jimmy was injured. They went 8-9. And again, you say they were at 3 and then almost dropped out of the playoffs. That's true, but again, we know how tight that was from 3 to 8. But still, they did almost fall out. They were 8-9, so about 500. But you do look at the numbers that Cat put up there. They were incredible. 25.2 points per game, 12.6 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists per game, 1.2 blocks per game, 0.8 steals per game, 85% from the line, 42.9% from 3, 54.1% from the field. Again, we know the monster that Cat is offensively. I think Cat even had the highest scoring game in Minnesota Timberwolves history in that stretch as well. Maybe it's just something where Cat wants to prove he's the guy. Again, he was the number 1 overall pick for Minnesota.
But that gets you exactly where it got you at the end of last year, watching the playoffs. 8-9 record in those games where Cat had where he had performances that were above career average. And that's what you're saying. That's what I'm seeing is Jimmy Butler, successful team, playoff team, and they are well-rounded and positive. Cat, great individual performances, but overall success as a team, he's not able to finish that.
But what if he's just saying, and maybe this is something where, again, maybe he needs a player like Jimmy Butler, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something where Jimmy Butler shouldn't be on this team. Maybe he's giving them an ultimatum, and maybe this is what it will come to of Karl-Anthony Towns or Jimmy Butler, and that's maybe what Karl-Anthony Towns is going to say is that again, we can win. We have a valuable player in Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler is not going to work with me. We should get a player that's going to work with me, like DeMarcus Cousins worked with Anthony Davis, like Drew Holiday worked with Anthony Davis. Maybe that's what this needs to boil down to is maybe they need to build this team around Cat instead of building this team to just make the playoffs, because maybe Karl-Anthony Towns thinks so highly of himself that he can take this team to the playoffs with Wiggins, with a great point guard, not Jeff Teague, and with a guy that could stretch the floor, maybe like a Nico did.
You know what I find really funny? Last year, Jimmy is a Chicago Bull, right?
Yes, sir.
Locker room problems all over the place. And with that, it was Fred doesn't have control of the locker room.
Yep.
This time, we're talking about a relationship that's skewed, but what's the difference here? Jimmy Butler is a coach that's in his corner 100%. There's no way Tibbs, A, doesn't have control of the locker room, but B, is not going to go against Jimmy. So for me, this isn't a cat like a, hey, you know what, trade me or Jimmy. It's this relationship is screwed. It's not like we can't build on this because you're in this guy's corner and Jimmy gets his. I'm insinuating a little bit, but like Jimmy gets his way, you're his guy. I want out. That's what I think it is. Not a you
Do you
or
think
me.
it's Wiggins and Cat on one side?
It could
and
be.
Well,
it was
the rest of the Timberwolves on the other.
It was
something-
D-Wade and Jimmy and the Bulls.
There's something too with
Timberwolves.
Andrew Wiggins where they were saying that he might be pushed out, where he might be the odd man out. He was upset with his usage. And one thing too, you look at Andrew Wiggins' performances in those 17 games, his points per game went up. He was at like 17.7 on the season as a whole. He was at 18.9 when Jimmy Butler was out. His percentages from the field went up 2%, went up about 1.5, went from 43 to 45.5. His 3-point percentage was above league average, went from 33% to 37.9%. Even his free throw percentage went up from 64% to 68%. So Andrew Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns performed better without Jimmy Butler. The team didn't. But the two players did. So, again, what would you rather do? Would you go with youth or would you go with Jimmy Butler and Tom Thibodeau? That's the question that I think this might boil down to. Because, yes, this team made the playoffs. Yes, they broke the streak that Minnesota was, I think, out of the playoffs for 14 straight years. But does that rely to a conducive team? Does that rely to three great guys with talent? Or does that relate to a team that's welding together? So far, it hasn't worked out, in at least with the year with Jimmy Butler.
And that's why I'm just going to throw this out here are we going to look back at the hiring of Thibodeau and saying, hey, this was a horrible hire for the T-Wolves, mainly because I look at it, I'm just bringing back the yes man. Derrick Rose comes back. Now, Derrick Rose did ball out a little bit in that playoff.
I say he earned his shit. You don't talk shit about Derrick Rose.
D Rose comes back, or bringing in Taj Gibson, Jimmy Butler. It's like, and if I was Cat, I'd be like, whoa, I thought this was my team. This is not my team anymore. This is not the T-Wolves. It's the Timberwolves.
I'd say the difference is the head coach knows that he can take those four guys into the playoffs.
And get an 8
those
seed.
4 guys can get in the playoffs, yes.
Well, it's funny, too, because 5 months ago, guess what we had?
Yeah.
We had the topic that only got 752 views. Go check out this video. Is Tom Thibodeau the right coach for the Timberwolves? What did we say?
I don't remember what I said.
I said no.
I said no.
This was
Or
not
he
going to be
said no.
conducive.
We all said
Did I
no.
say it?
We
I don't
said no
remember.
because this was, again, a team
We said
that
How
his
long ago
defensive
was that?
6
5 months ago, December 11th,
A year
2017.
ago. That's a long time ago.
This was just this is something where they were 6-11 in the West. They were in the 4th seed. They didn't show exactly the great growth. This was
The defense still wasn't there.
The defense still wasn't there. It's just something that maybe he doesn't fit the NBA coaching style, like we agree. Maybe he sees players like James Harden going with a coach like Mike D'Antoni that fits his personality. And look where the Rockets are. Look where LeBron was, at least with Ty Lue. Again, Ty Lue's not a great coach, but LeBron's a little bit more happier with Ty Lue as a coach. We look at what Steve Kerr does for these players. I mean, it's something where maybe the coach isn't the right fit, and maybe him picking favorites like Jimmy Butler, maybe him making Jimmy Butler the focus of this team is going to end up hurting Minnesota in the long run. And it's clearly surfacing as Karl-Anthony Towns is not having a great relationship with Minnesota. So let's get into the thing, at least the details of this topic. Will Karl-Anthony Towns be traded by the Minnesota Timberwolves?
I'm going to lean towards yes by like 51%.
Wow.
I'm completely in the middle, but I'll lean yes a little bit.
Okay.
The interesting thing I wanted to throw out there about this, though, is the first team I'm thinking about is the Clippers. And the reason why I think about the Clippers is back in January, there were talks that the Clippers proposed a blockbuster deal that involved Blake Griffin for Cat.
Yeah.
And the T-Wolves said no. So what I'm thinking this time around, what if it happens where T-Wolves ring, hey, Clippers, you were interested before, and Jerry West goes, oh, how the tables have turned. Like, now they have an extra draft pick. Do you want to trade both draft picks for Cat? But Jerry West can now be in the driver's seat to maybe swindle the T-Wolves like he swindled the Pistons to take Blake Griffin.
I mean, it's entirely possible. Assets are there, but what does Tom Thibodeau care about assets? He don't. He wants players who can, come play for him and compete for the playoffs.
Like a DeAndre Jordan.
That'd have to be a sign, but yeah.
If he accepts that player option, DeAndre Jordan for Cat.
I don't know. That's asking a lot. I honestly think that he will
Develop and
I think he'll stay. I think Cat stays. I think Wiggins might be the odd man out, or Tom Thibodeau's the odd man out. It's one or the other. One of those two guys. I think Cat's too unique to go up. Even if he's angry, we've seen players get angry at situations. Kristaps didn't even talk to his own freaking team for like a month. So I think that he needs to vent his frustration because he had a disappointing performance in the playoffs, and he feels like had they correctly utilized his talent, they wouldn't have gotten bounced so quickly. I think there is a fair point to what Ricky said about the imbalance in the locker room and the potential favoritism. But at the same time, you have to understand that Jimmy Butler is a better player than you. Jimmy Butler's the guy.
Is he?
Yes.
Karl-Anthony Towns is
when
20.
it's game on the line, like tie
Jimmy
game.
Butler's clutch as fuck.
But again, I'm not disagreeing that Jimmy Butler is clutch as fuck. But are we talking? Are we talking about next season, or are we talking about who's more valuable to a franchise?
I mean,
I would say Karl-Anthony Towns is more valuable to a franchise.
He's younger.
I'm not saying that one guy can hit shots right now. I'm not saying that one guy's at more of a prime position and one guy's a great two-way player in Jimmy Butler. Right. But one's Karl-Anthony Towns.
No,
I mean, this guy is a 7-footer with great athleticism that's shooting from three.
Yep.
I mean,
at a high percentage.
This scoring output from Karl-Anthony Towns. Again, he had 2 bad games in the playoffs, but he's still in his first playoff appearance. And again, this was against a great Houston team. Karl-Anthony Towns still has miles to grow, and he just put up 25 points in his second year, and his percentages were better in his junior year. So, again, I think Karl-Anthony Towns might be at least more valuable.
The question is, how far gone is this relationship? Is it mendable, or is it so far gone to where it's like, fuck it, we just got to trade. We got to trade Cat. We got to get him out of town.
I think the problem comes down to his game's so one-sided that Thibodeau has, you can only deal with someone who's such a net negative on the defensive side for so long. Yes,
especially when you're Thibodeau.
You can ignore it for part, but yeah, Thibodeau side, I can see where he's coming from, and I can see the lack of growth in year 2 under Thibodeau from him, where it just comes to the point where he's like, look, I'm going with Jimmy. He's the guy who got us here. Yep. He's the guy we're going to play through. He's a better ball handler, and he is a dynamic playmaker.
Two-way player.
I got this. All right, I got this. We all brought up great points, and I think my trade will help fix it.
Right,
again, I'm not saying this is going to be something that's going to happen.
Yeah,
but I just will throw this out there. We've heard Anthony Davis's names in trade rumors before, correct? What's the one team that's been valuing Anthony Davis?
Boston.
Huh. Weird. What's Boston's problem right now that we see them facing?
I mean, I don't see any problems. They're rolling.
What's one problem we see them possibly facing next year?
Warriors.
Kevin Durant.
Where are all these wings going to play? Jaylen Brown,
so many wings.
Jason Tatum,
so many wings.
Gordon Hayward. Where are these guys going to play? Are they all going to be able to play and get playing time?
They play 1 through 4, baby.
Now, Tom Thibodeau loves defensive players, right?
Yeah.
So, Jaylen Brown goes to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Karl-Anthony Towns goes to the Boston Celtics. And
these fans from the Celtics are going to murder you.
And Minnesota gets the Sacramento Kings pick in 2019.
Jesus Christ.
And then also, the Celtics have the Memphis pick in 2019. We just talked about Memphis being a dumpster fire. So Memphis will either get Memphis pick if it's 9 or later in 2019. You get it if it's number 7 or later in 2020, or you get the Memphis pick unregarded in 2021. So you get 2 first-round picks, Jaylen Brown for Karl-Anthony Towns, and you look at this Boston team. What's Karl-Anthony Towns' biggest deficiency?
Defense.
What has Brad Stevens done so well?
He's made holes in the defense.
Young kids look great defensively, and he's covered up holes in young players.
Yep.
So, what if I told you, and this is now starting to sound like an ESPN 30 for 30.
Yep. What if I told you?
Kyrie Irving comes back, plays point guard. At the 2, weirdly enough, you have Jason Tatum play. Or, let's put Gordon Hayward there.
Hayward, yeah.
Kyrie Irving plays the 1. Gordon Hayward plays the 2. Jason Tatum plays the 3. Karl-Anthony Towns plays the 4, and at the 5 you have Al Horford who can move that ball around the offense.
I mean, Cat would sign off on a deal like that in about a second, maybe a second and a half.
Where are the problems in the trade?
The problem is that the Timberwolves getting Jaylen Brown doesn't make them a better team.
But it also gets you a player that's still young It gets you a player that showed a ton of promise.
Oh
This
my
is,
God,
again,
yes.
Jaylen Brown's been a great
But the
player so
spacing
far.
is not there
What do you
between
mean?
Jimmy, Jalen, and Wiggins.
But that gives you the option now to trade Wiggins if Wiggins is unhappy.
For what?
And you bring in another big, or you bring in a guy that can stretch the floor.
Let's go try to chase another cat.
But Cat's not happy there, and you get a guy that's at least going to fit. Again, I understand that. Again, it's a lot to do.
You're trading
but,
for Jaylen Brown to be a Wiggins replacement, so you can trade Wiggins to find a cat replacement. Do you see what you're doing here?
the cat that you have doesn't want to play.
The cat in the bag.
Again, I'm not saying. Hey, did I ever say this is going to happen? I said this is an option. Did I ever say this is going to happen?
No.
Did I ever say this is going to happen?
No, I'm just
I
trying
said this is
to.
an option.
I'm trying. I've still got. Yeah.
I'm not saying this is going to happen. I think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to stay. I think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to stay. Why would you trade Karl-Anthony Towns? He's one of the best bigs and up-and-coming bigs in the league.
Yeah,
I think it's
don't
gonna
throw
happen.
on his ass.
I'm throwing out something that might be able to happen because at least value-wise it does work out.
Yes, I agree. They're both highly
Jaylen Brown,
valuable
2
players.
first-round picks for Karl-Anthony Towns.
I think Boston would say Jaylen Brown and 1 first-round pick for Cat. But that's sort of because Jaylen Brown's been balling out since he.
But if you're Boston, you fix your wing problem, you get Karl-Anthony Towns. And
what
now you
wing
have
problem? Their wing problem is they have too many good wings.
exactly. So then you
They
fill
roll
out
with
your
3
your
wings.
positions at the 5 and the 4 with Karl-Anthony Towns.
I mean,
And your wing problem still.
But the problem
your
is
problem's
that-
fixed.
I would rather trade for Anthony Davis than Cat.
But
5
Davis
times out
isn't
of
going to
5.
get traded. They're not trading AD.
We don't know.
AD, they're a playoff team. AD's their guy. They just signed AD. AD's locked up. Why are they moving AD? They don't need to move AD.
It's the freaking Pelicans, man.
What does that mean?
Does it have to make sense?
Yes, the Pelicans have been a fairly decent run franchise for the past 2 years. They got DeMarcus Cousins. If they bring back Boogie Cousins, there you go.
If they can bring him back, then yeah.
That's a team that's probably 5th seed in the Western Conference next
Yep.
year. So
I agree.
I think that
But
Karl-Anthony Towns on this Boston team, you can take out the Warriors like that. Can you not?
I don't
Kyrie
think-
Irving, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Karl-Anthony
I'm
Towns,
sorry,
and Al Horford.
I gotta see that before I believe it. Like, I'm not the Warriors and LeBron. Like I said in our Eastern Conference preview, I picked Cavs in 7 because I mean you don't pick against LeBron.
I'll throw out a funny one for you. All right, here
Then
we
I'm
go.
bringing
We're bringing Caleb back to Minnesota.
Oh.
Caleb and Larry Nance for Taj Gibson, Karl-Anthony Towns in the 8th pick. Goes to Minnesota.
And their future something.
Future J.R. Smith. I don't know.
Jesus.
But there's one funny for you. I mean, I think that there's not going to be a deal going out because there's no value for Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, you can't-
You can't value Karl-Anthony Towns. Even if he's going to get a max contract, a player like that deserves a max contract. It's like trying to trade Anthony Davis. It's like trying to trade
You will never get
DeMarcus
equal
Cousins.
value.
DeMarcus Cousins.
Except
that
for
trade-
Paul George, which apparently worked out.
Yeah, that trade doesn't look terrible that DeMarcus Cousins won now, but when it first happened, we were saying Sacramento were idiots because we don't know where to value these great players. So Karl-Anthony Towns, what?
No, I'm remembering back to the Boogie trade, and I was like, I don't know. I thought we were pretty even on that one.
No, I trashed that one.
Oh.
21 minutes on solo podcast. But no, again,
you did do a solo.
You did.
podcast.
That was good.
It goes down to we don't know how to value these players because again, Karl-Anthony Towns is 22 years old. If he develops a defensive game, he's better offensively than Joel Embiid. Is he not?
Yes.
So if he develops a defensive game, how is he not Anthony Davis? How can he not be better than
Because Anthony Davis
Davis
is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate for the last X years and will be for the next X years.
But if Karl-Anthony Towns is better offensively, again, Karl-Anthony Towns is only 22 years old. Again, if he's able to still develop this offensive game, be a player that shoots 50, 40, and 90 as a big, as a 7-footer.
I understand what he can do offensively. I don't think he ever gets close to league average on
But if he
defense.
goes to Brad Stevens, Boston's department of turning players into defensive gods, how could he not?
How could he not?
I'm just saying.
If Tom Thibodeau couldn't teach this man defense, I know Brad Stevens is a better coach than Tom Thibodeau, but Tom Thibodeau is a coach for just renowned defensive knowledge.
But he doesn't know how to coach players. That's the whole argument that we're boiling down to is that he doesn't know how to relate to Karl-Anthony Towns and these young players. That's what we're boiling it down to. Brad Stevens has proven that he can work with young players, that he can work with guys that have at least personality issues. I mean, Isaiah Thomas.
Thibodeau should have just gone to Memphis.
He should have.
Why didn't we think of that earlier?
He should have. But I mean, look at the head case that Isaiah Thomas turned out to be after he left Boston. Yeah, he was great in Boston. Look at Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder's a complete head case. Didn't hear a single thing out of him when he was in Boston. Avery Bradley. Marcus Smart is insane. But Marcus Smart also is a great positive for Boston.
You meant insane as an insult there, I'm pretty sure, right?
Marcus Smart has beat up players when he was beat up fans when he was at Oklahoma State. Marcus Smart was a little bit of a head case back at Oklahoma State. He's shown even in Boston a little bit to be a little bit of a head case, but he's been doing it protecting teammates.
He gets in people's heads too.
Brad Stevens is valued players.
Yep.
If Boston gets Karl-Anthony Towns, you get. I'm going to say it because I said it even at the start of the season. Mm-hmm. You get the best big man in the league. I'll say it over Joe, and I'll say it possibly over Anthony Davis. Not right now, but he could develop to possibly the best big in the league.
So I got one trade I'll throw out.
I'm not saying right now. I'm saying potential.
All right.
Does Cat not have the potential to be the best player in the league?
We'll see.
He shoots 60, 40, 90
Let me know,
as a big.
Let me know what you think of this trade. This is with the Clippers.
He's like 55.
I finally worked one out that works. So the T-Wolves would get DeAndre Jordan, Pat Bev, and whichever Clipper pick you want. I'll go with the one that's on the bottom. The Clippers would get Jeff Teague, Karl-Anthony Towns, and the T-Wolves pick. So it's like, you know what? We're swapping these players, Jordan and Beverly, for Teague and Towns, and I'll give you one of my top lottery picks, but I get your first round pick.
Sean, go ahead and laugh
Hell
at this.
no. What the fuck? Where's
Do you think they're
value?
remotely even in value?
Do you know who Karl-Anthony Towns is?
I'm just trying to find something.
It would be the two picks this year and then a pick next year.
Jeff Teague is more valuable than Pat Bev.
The thing that is weird about this Clipper thing is, do they have enough value to get Karl-Anthony Towns?
No.
And will they want to budge from both of their picks?
No.
I would trade both of my picks
and a next
13 futures.
No, one
for Karl-Anthony
future.
But would the Clippers want to do
I'm
that
being
because
dramatic.
of their whole...
But the weird thing is, I think that trade, if it happened, I think that Timberwolves team is better.
Well, because Pat Bev...
I think Pat Bev and DeAndre
But who
Jordan
wins
on that
the trade?
roster.
The-
Long term, probably the Clippers.
Is it close long term?
I don't know.
No.
We don't know.
Well, it depends on, is Doc the guy to bring him somewhere, or do they move on from Doc?
I mean, Cat is going to be playing second fill, the Doc's son.
Yeah.
I appreciate the effort, Ricky. I'm not saying I don't.
I want to hear, do you think that this Timberwolves team would have a better chance at winning with Pat
DeAndre
Bev
Jordan?
and DeAndre Jordan than Cat and Teague?
Defensively, they'd be disgusting.
I mean,
How would they not be? Defensively, they'd be
Jimmy
disgusting.
Butler, Pat Bev,
Taj Gibson.
and
Unreal.
DeAndre Jordan.
Unreal
You got
defensively.
one wing you got to worry about, and Wiggins, and even he is athletic enough to be an average defender.
Yeah, you put him on the worst
Exactly.
1 through 3.
It's incredible. That would just be sick.
But I don't think they take down the Warriors. I don't think they take down Golden State. You had Karl-Anthony Towns to Boston. That team's winning the NBA championship for the next 13 years.
You say I don't agree with that, but okay.
Real quick, I'm just gonna throw this out there. Karl-Anthony Towns' line this year, 54, 42, and 85, is better than any shooting line that Anthony Davis has ever had in his career.
Yeah.
And also, Karl-Anthony Towns has played 82 games in every single year.
How many 50-20 games does he have?
I don't know.
How many does
probably,
Anthony
'cause he
Davis
has the
have?
56.
Like,
Again, Anthony Davis. I'm not saying Anthony Davis isn't
Maybe
the
like
best
a
player
dozen,
right
but
now. At least the best center and best big.
Best big because I think Boogie's the best center.
Best big in the NBA right now. I'm not disagreeing in that, but also I'm just saying
He has potential because he's an offensive genius.
Offensive guy,
Like
and you could teach a 22-year-old kid.
He is so smooth for his size; it doesn't make sense.
I don't know. Let us know what you think about a Karl-Anthony Towns trade. This camera's going to die in about 3, 2, 1. Imagine if I called it. Anyways,
That would've been
I knew you weren't
What if it's not
gonna.
even recording? Anyways, that's gonna
I
wrap
see
up.
the red dot, so it is.
That's gonna end the Karl-Anthony Towns talk.
I'd be upset if it wasn't.
Ricky, I appreciate the Clippers trade, but I don't think value outlines
I
out there.
think that the Clippers, not that exact trade, but I think a trade with the Clippers will be most likely because the Clippers did show interest before when they did have Blake.
Does it happen though?
Yes. I'm going to say, I'm still going with
He
my
still thinks it's gonna
51% that Cat gets traded.
51%?
Yeah,
Nice
right now
way to
it's
hedge your
right-
bets there, buddy.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm on the fence, but I'll lean a little bit to the yes side.
David, does it happen?
No,
What's team most likely?
Thibodeau is going to get.
He asked which team is more likely.
Thibodeau.
Thibodeau, Team Thibodeau.
Toronto Thibodeau's. Any team that sounds most likely, or is it just not going to happen?
It's just not going to happen at all.
I think if a team is most likely, there goes the camera. If a team is most likely, it's going to be Boston. It's not going to happen, though. Karl-Anthony Towns is going to stay in Minnesota. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. Let us know if you think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be traded, if this relationship can be repaired. Anyways, that's going to do it here for the Fast Break Podcast. Don't forget to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Also, don't forget to check out mostvaluablepodcast.com. You can check out our shops and get some MVP merch. We're going to have some Patreons next week. Hopefully, Jake, and hopefully
Will.
channel as well. The new patron, we were supposed to have him on last month. We're excited to have him on this month. Jesus Christ.
Weeks, months?
This has been
Time flies.
a rough podcast because we've done, I think, over 6 hours of podcasting
In 1 week?
Well, we
in the
had
past
2
2
last
weeks.
week. We had 2 this week.
Yeah,
Oh
so
my
about 6
God.
hours of podcasting, maybe even closing in on 7. 7 hours of podcasting
And those drafts
in the past
were
2 weeks.
2 hours each.
They were
Yes.
a ton of fun.
So yeah, there's 4 hours, and then I think we had 2 other hour episodes. So maybe 7-8 hours of podcasting. We hope you've been enjoying them. We're glad to be doing them. We're gonna get a 1 podcast week next week, hopefully, unless some crazy news happens, like Karl-Anthony Towns getting
More.
traded. But anyways, that should do it. I think I did all the housekeeping. Thank you again for helping us have our best 2 months back to back. We're super excited of getting more content as the June 21st date of the NBA draft comes around. But for Dave Oster, for Ricky Widmer, I'm Sean Anderson. We'll see you next time.